Thief. The word exploded across the wedding ballroom before Naomi Carter could even swallow the piece of bread in her shaking hand. Crystal chandeliers glowed above hundreds of rich guests dressed in diamonds and silk. A violin played softly somewhere near the stage. But all eyes had turned toward the homeless girl standing beside the dessert table. Naomi froze. Her old brown jacket was soaked from the rain outside. Her shoes were torn. Her fingers trembled around the small dinner roll she had slipped into her pocket. A security guard grabbed her arm hard enough to make the plate fall from her hands. Glass shattered across the marble floor. Several guests gasped. Then came the laughter. Quiet at first. Then louder. She came here for free food. Look at her clothes. These people have no shame. Naomi lowered her eyes immediately. Not because she was guilty. Because she was tired. Tired of hungry nights. Tired of cold sidewalks. Tired of people looking at her like garbage before she even spoke. Please, she whispered softly. I was only taking leftovers. Veronica Hayes stepped forward through the crowd in a silver designer gown, cold and elegant like a queen protecting her kingdom. Diamonds sparkled around her neck. Her heels clicked slowly against the marble. Every guest moved aside for her automatically. Power followed her without effort. She stared at Naomi with open disgust. You broke into my nephew's wedding to steal food? Naomi swallowed hard. I did not break in. Then why are you hiding bread in your pocket? Veronica snapped. More laughter. More phones lifted into the air. Someone was recording now. Naomi quickly covered the torn pocket of her jacket like that could somehow protect her dignity. My mother has not eaten since yesterday, she whispered. She is sick. Veronica did not blink. That is not our problem. The words hit harder than the rain outside. Naomi looked around desperately. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody defended her. Rich men avoided her eyes. Women whispered behind champagne glasses. The violin music had stopped completely now. Silence pressed against her chest. Then another guard approached. Bigger. Colder. Should we call the police? He asked. Naomi's breathing shook. No, please. She held on to the old paper bag hanging from her shoulder like it contained her entire life. Because it did. Inside was medicine for Mama Evelyn. 1 apple. A bus receipt. And the tiny silver music box she never let anyone touch. I was leaving, Naomi said quickly. Please let me leave. Veronica crossed her arms slowly. People like you always say that after they get caught. Naomi's eyes filled with tears immediately. But she fought them back. She had cried enough in life already. I was hungry, she admitted quietly. That does not make me a criminal. One drunk guest laughed loudly near the dance floor. Maybe she came looking for a rich husband. More laughter followed. Naomi felt the humiliation crawl over her skin like fire. She looked toward the giant wedding cake glowing beneath golden lights. Flowers. Crystal glasses. Expensive suits. Perfect smiles. It felt like another world. And she did not belong in it. A young waitress near the back hesitated for 1 second like she wanted to help Naomi. Tiny hope. Tiny kindness. But Veronica noticed immediately. If anyone here feels sorry for her, Veronica announced coldly, they can leave with her. The waitress lowered her head instantly. Hope died again. Naomi's voice cracked. Please. I only wanted food for my mother. Veronica stepped closer until they stood face to face. Then begged somewhere else. Silence. Sharp. Cruel. Naomi slowly lowered herself to her knees on the marble floor. Gasps spread across the ballroom. Even the guards looked uncomfortable now. She hated this moment. Hated herself for needing mercy from people who had none. But Mama Evelyn was waiting for her. Sick. Weak. Hungry. Naomi looked up with trembling eyes. Please, she whispered again. Do not throw the food away. Let me take it to her. Veronica's face stayed cold. Pathetic. She turned toward security. Get her out before she ruins the wedding photos. The guards grabbed Naomi by both arms now. The paper bag fell open across the floor. Medicine rolled away. Receipts scattered everywhere. And then, the small silver music box slid across the marble and stopped near the wedding stage. The ballroom lights reflected against its scratched metal surface. One of the older guests suddenly frowned. That box, he murmured softly. Naomi panicked immediately and tried to reach for it. Please do not touch that. But the guard pulled her back harder. The music box accidentally clicked open. A soft melody filled the ballroom. Delicate. Familiar. Strange. Veronica's face changed for one brief second. Fear. Real fear. Then she quickly masked it again. Throw that trash away too, she snapped. Naomi's heart nearly stopped. No, she cried. The entire ballroom turned silent again. And that was the exact moment the giant entrance doors opened. A black luxury car had just arrived outside beneath the rain. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Calm. Slow. Powerful. Malcolm Hayes had finally arrived. The billionaire groom walked into the ballroom wearing a black tailored suit, rain still glistening across his shoulders. The crowd instantly parted for him. But Malcolm did not look at the guests first. His eyes locked onto the silver music box lying open on the floor beside Naomi. His expression changed instantly. Confusion. Shock. Recognition. Naomi tried desperately to pull away from the guards. Please, she whispered through tears. Give it back. Malcolm took one slow step forward. Then another. The entire ballroom stopped breathing as he stared directly at Naomi's face. And suddenly, the billionaire groom spoke in a quiet voice that changed everything. Wait, he said slowly. I know you. The ballroom stayed frozen after Malcolm Hayes said those 4 words. I know you. Naomi Carter stopped struggling against the guards immediately. Rainwater still dripped from her old jacket onto the marble floor. The silver music box lay open between them, its tiny melody echoing softly beneath the crystal chandeliers. Malcolm stared at it like he had seen a ghost. Veronica Hayes stepped forward fast. Malcolm, she said sharply, forcing a smile. This girl is a thief. But Malcolm did not look at Veronica. His eyes stayed locked on Naomi's face. Tired eyes. Hungry eyes. Familiar eyes. Naomi lowered her gaze quickly. Shame burned inside her chest. She hated being looked at by rich people. Especially like this. Like she was a problem standing in the middle of their perfect night. Malcolm finally spoke again. Quiet. Controlled. Let her go. The guards hesitated. Veronica's face tightened instantly. She stole from the wedding. Food, Malcolm replied calmly. She stole food. Silence spread through the ballroom again. The rich guests exchanged awkward glances. One woman slowly lowered her phone. Another whispered, "Why is he defending her?" Naomi rubbed her wrist softly after the guards released her. Red marks already covered her skin. She quickly bent down to grab the scattered medicine bottles before anyone stepped on them. Her hands trembled badly now. Malcolm noticed everything. The old shoes. The empty stomach hidden beneath silence. The way she protected the medicine before herself. Who is the medicine for? He asked suddenly. Naomi froze for 1 second. My mother. Veronica laughed softly. Cold. Beautiful. Cruel. There is always a story. Naomi swallowed hard but kept packing the medicine carefully into the torn paper bag. It is not a story, she whispered. She is sick. Malcolm's eyes moved toward the paper prescription label sticking halfway out of the bag. County Hospital. Late-stage heart failure. Expired payment notice stamped in red. Something shifted slightly in his expression. Not pity. Something deeper. Confusion maybe. Memory. Then his eyes returned to the silver music box. Where did you get that? Naomi grabbed it immediately and held it close to her chest. Protective. Almost scared. It was my mother's. Veronica interrupted fast. Enough of this. Her voice cut through the room sharply. The guests are waiting. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. But Malcolm did not move. The giant ballroom suddenly felt smaller now. Tighter. Like something invisible had started moving beneath the surface. Naomi slowly stepped backward. I should go. Wait. Malcolm's voice stopped her instantly. The crowd turned silent again. Even Naomi looked surprised. Malcolm walked closer now. Expensive black shoes against polished marble. Power in every step. Naomi instinctively lowered her eyes again. Poor people learn to do that around rich men. What is your name? He asked softly. Naomi hesitated. Veronica's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. Tiny fear flashed across her face for half a second. Naomi, she answered quietly. Malcolm repeated the name under his breath like testing an old memory. Naomi, then something strange happened. Jordan Hayes, Malcolm's young nephew, suddenly stepped closer from near the wedding cake. Uncle Malcolm, the little boy whispered innocently, that song sounds like Grandma's old music box. The room went silent again. Veronica immediately snapped, Jordan, go back to your seat. The child flinched. Malcolm frowned slowly. What did you say? Jordan pointed toward Naomi's music box. Grandpa used to play that song when I was little. Veronica stepped between them instantly. It is just an old melody. But Malcolm kept staring at the box now. Harder. Deeper. Naomi noticed the change in his face and panic slowly rose inside her chest. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew rich people never looked at homeless girls this way. Not with recognition. Not with shock. If you are watching right now, tell me something, would you believe Naomi? Or would you believe the powerful family standing against her? Naomi slowly backed away again. Please, she whispered. I do not want trouble. Malcolm looked at her soaked jacket. Her trembling hands. The medicine. Then toward the untouched tables overflowing with expensive food. Thousands of dollars wasted in one room while one girl begged for bread. Did you really come here just for food? He asked quietly. Naomi looked down at the paper bag in silence. Then she finally answered with a broken voice. My mother fainted this morning because she had not eaten in 2 days. The ballroom grew painfully quiet. One guest looked away uncomfortably. Another slowly put down his champagne glass. Tiny hope. Tiny humanity. But Veronica crushed it immediately. People lie when they are desperate, she announced loudly. That does not make them innocent. Naomi's eyes filled again. She nodded slowly like she was already used to nobody believing her. You are right, she whispered painfully. Poor people always sound like liars to rich people. Malcolm's expression changed again at those words. Sharp. Distant. Like something old inside his mind had just cracked open. Suddenly his phone rang. The sound cut through the silence. Malcolm answered without taking his eyes off Naomi. Yes. His face slowly darkened as he listened. Then he looked directly at Naomi's music box again. Are you certain? He asked the caller quietly. Veronica's breathing became uneven now. Malcolm ended the call slowly. The entire ballroom waited. Then he asked Naomi one final question that made the room stop breathing. Who gave your mother that music box? Naomi clutched it tighter against her chest. Her lips trembled. A man named Elijah Hayes. Veronica nearly dropped her glass. Veronica Hayes nearly dropped her champagne glass after hearing the name Elijah Hayes leave Naomi Carter's mouth. For one dangerous second, fear flashed across her face again. Real fear. Malcolm noticed immediately. The ballroom stayed painfully silent. Naomi clutched the silver music box tightly against her chest like it was the only thing she had left in the world. Malcolm stared at her carefully now. Not like a homeless stranger anymore. Like a question he could not answer. How do you know my grandfather's name? He asked quietly. Naomi shook her head slowly. I do not know him. Veronica interrupted fast. This girl probably read about the family online. Malcolm did not answer her. His eyes stayed on Naomi. Then who told you the name Elijah Hayes? Naomi hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the music box. My mother. Silence. Sharp silence. Veronica immediately stepped closer. Enough. Her voice sounded too fast now. Too nervous. This wedding has already suffered enough embarrassment. Naomi lowered her eyes again. She could feel every rich guest staring at her dirty shoes and soaked jacket. She hated this feeling. Like she was standing in a room full of gold while carrying all the shame in the world. Malcolm finally spoke calmly. Let her leave. Veronica blinked. What? She is leaving, Malcolm repeated quietly. Nobody touches her. Naomi quickly grabbed the medicine bottles from the floor and backed away toward the ballroom doors. She did not wait for kindness twice. People like her learned that rich people changed their minds quickly. As she stepped outside into the cold rain, the mansion doors closed behind her with heavy silence. The luxury cars. The glowing lights. The expensive laughter. All disappeared behind iron gates again. Naomi walked 3 blocks through the rain before the tears finally came. Not loud tears. Exhausted tears. Her stomach still hurt from hunger. Her shoes rubbed painfully against her skin. And inside her torn bag, the medicine for Mama Evelyn rattled beside unpaid hospital bills. Across town, Malcolm stood alone near the ballroom window staring into the storm. One of his assistants approached carefully. Sir. Malcolm did not turn around. Find out everything about Naomi Carter. Everything. Where she lives. Who raised her. And why my grandfather's name was attached to that music box. The assistant nodded immediately and walked away. Veronica watched from across the ballroom, hiding panic behind another smile for the guests. But her fingers would not stop shaking. Meanwhile, Naomi finally reached the small apartment building near the old bus station. Paint peeled from the walls. Broken lights flickered in the hallway. Someone argued loudly behind a nearby door. She climbed the stairs slowly, exhausted from the night. Inside apartment 3B, Mama Evelyn lay coughing beneath thin blankets on an old sofa bed. The room smelled like medicine and rainwater leaking through the ceiling. Naomi rushed to her side immediately. Mama. Mama Evelyn opened her weak eyes slowly. Did you eat? Naomi lied instantly. Yes. Mama Evelyn noticed the untouched bread still inside the paper bag. Her old eyes filled with sadness. You gave it to me again, did you not? Naomi looked away quietly. You needed it more. The older woman coughed hard into a cloth already stained from illness. Naomi quickly handed her the medicine bottle. But the bottle was nearly empty now. Only 2 pills remained. Naomi's face fell immediately. No, she searched the paper bag desperately for the refill receipt. Gone. Missing. Panic rushed through her chest. The pharmacy receipt fell at the wedding. Mama Evelyn grabbed Naomi's hand weakly. Forget the medicine. No, Naomi shook her head instantly. I promised I would take care of you. A hard knock suddenly hit the apartment door. Both women froze. The landlord's voice exploded from outside. Rent is overdue again. Naomi closed her eyes painfully. Please, she whispered toward the door. Just 1 more week. You said that last week. Another knock. Harder. Pay tomorrow or I lock the apartment. Silence filled the tiny room after his footsteps faded away. Rain dripped from the ceiling into a bucket near the window. Naomi slowly sat on the floor beside Mama Evelyn. Tired. Humiliated. Trapped. Then Mama Evelyn noticed the music box still clutched tightly in Naomi's hands. Her breathing suddenly changed. Fear entered her eyes immediately. Where did you open this? Naomi frowned softly. At the wedding. Mama Evelyn grabbed her wrist weakly. Did anyone see it? Naomi hesitated. The groom. The old woman's face turned pale instantly. No, she whispered. He cannot see that box. Naomi stared at her in confusion. Why? Mama Evelyn looked terrified now. Real terror. Before she could answer, Naomi's cracked phone suddenly vibrated on the floor. Unknown number. Naomi hesitated before answering softly. Hello. A calm male voice came through the line. Miss Carter. Mr. Malcolm Hayes would like to speak with you privately tomorrow morning. Naomi's eyes widened slowly. And across the room, Mama Evelyn whispered one frightened sentence that made Naomi's blood run cold. Do not tell the Hayes family your real name. Do not tell the Hayes family your real name. Mama Evelyn's frightened whisper still echoed inside Naomi Carter's head long after the phone call ended. The tiny apartment felt colder now. Rain tapped softly against the cracked window while the old woman coughed weakly beneath thin blankets. Naomi stared at the silver music box in her hands. Questions kept crashing into her mind. Why was Mama Evelyn so afraid of the Hayes family? Why did Malcolm Hayes look at her like he recognized something impossible? And why did Veronica panic the moment Elijah Hayes' name was spoken? Across the city, Malcolm stood alone inside his private office at the Hayes mansion. The wedding guests were still downstairs pretending the night was normal again. Music played. Glasses clinked. Rich people smiled. But upstairs, silence filled the room. Malcolm stared at an old black and white photograph spread across his desk. A little black girl. Curly hair. Big eyes. Standing beside his grandfather Elijah Hayes near a lake cabin. The photograph was partially burned at one corner. And around the little girl's neck, hung the exact same silver music box chain Naomi carried tonight. Malcolm's assistant entered quietly. Sir. Malcolm did not look up. Did you find anything? The assistant placed a thin folder onto the desk carefully. Naomi Carter has no stable address history before age 12. School records are incomplete. Hospital records missing. Malcolm frowned slowly. Missing? Almost erased. Silence. Malcolm looked back at the old photograph again. The resemblance disturbed him now. Not exact. But close enough to pull at something buried deep in memory. Find out who Mama Evelyn really is, he ordered softly. And reopen my grandfather's private archive. The assistant hesitated. Sir. Mrs. Veronica Hayes already requested access to those files tonight. Malcolm finally lifted his eyes. Sharp. Dangerous. Why? She claimed she was protecting family privacy. Downstairs, Veronica stood near the ballroom window speaking quietly on the phone. Her perfect smile was gone now. "I told you years ago to destroy everything," she hissed softly. Silence on the other end. Veronica's face darkened. "Then find the remaining records before Malcolm does." She ended the call immediately when she noticed Jordan Hayes watching her from across the hallway. The little boy tilted his head innocently. "Why are you scared of Naomi?" Veronica forced another smile. "I am not scared of anyone." But Jordan did not look convinced. Back inside the apartment, Naomi carefully opened the music box again while Mama Evelyn slept weakly beside her. The melody played softly. Sad. Familiar. Her tired fingers traced a tiny engraved symbol hidden beneath the lid. H. She had seen those initials before. Somewhere. Suddenly Mama Evelyn woke sharply. "Do not open that too much," she whispered fearfully. Naomi looked confused. "Why?" The old woman's hands trembled badly now. "Because some memories were buried for a reason." Naomi sat beside her quietly. "Who is Elijah Hayes?" Mama Evelyn closed her eyes immediately. Silence. Painful silence. "A good man," she whispered after a long moment. "Surrounded by dangerous people." Naomi's phone vibrated again. Another unknown number. She hesitated before answering softly. "Hello." "Miss Carter," the calm male assistant said. "Mr. Hayes would like to meet you tomorrow morning. Private car. 7 o'clock. Naomi looked around the leaking apartment slowly. Peeling walls. Empty refrigerator. Unpaid rent notice hanging near the sink. Mama Evelyn struggling to breathe under worn blankets. Rich people belong to another universe. "I do not belong there," Naomi whispered. "Mr. Hayes believes you may know something important." Naomi almost laughed bitterly. Important. Nobody had ever called her important before. Tiny hope touched her chest for 1 second. Then came another hard knock at the apartment door. Louder this time. "Open up," the landlord shouted angrily. "Either pay tomorrow or get out." Mama Evelyn started coughing violently again. Naomi rushed to hold her shoulders carefully. Fear returned immediately. No money. Almost no medicine. Nowhere to go. The assistant's voice remained calm through the phone. "Mr. Hayes also offered medical assistance for your mother." Naomi froze. Tiny hope again. But Mama Evelyn grabbed her wrist suddenly with surprising strength. "No," she whispered desperately. "Do not trust Veronica Hayes." Naomi's breathing slowed. "What does Veronica know about me?" Before Mama Evelyn could answer, the apartment light suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Naomi heard footsteps outside the apartment door. Slow. Waiting. Then a folded envelope slid silently beneath the door. Naomi picked it up carefully with shaking hands. Inside was a copy of the old burned photograph Malcolm had been studying upstairs. The little girl's face was circled in red ink. And written beneath it were 4 chilling words. She was never supposed to live. She was never supposed to live. Naomi Carter read the words again while her hands shook violently in the dark apartment. Rainwater dripped through the ceiling beside her. Mama Evelyn stared at the old photograph inside the envelope like she had just seen death standing at the door. "Who sent this?" Naomi whispered. Mama Evelyn slowly shook her head. Fear filled her tired eyes. "They found us." Across the city, Malcolm Hayes sat inside his private office watching security footage from the wedding ballroom. Again and again, he replayed the exact moment Naomi's silver music box opened. The melody. Veronica's reaction. Jordan recognizing the song. None of it felt normal anymore. Malcolm paused the footage suddenly. His expression darkened. Veronica had not looked surprised by the music box. She had looked afraid of it. His assistant stood nearby holding another folder. "Sir, there is something else." Malcolm looked up slowly. "Talk." "The old photograph from your grandfather's archive is missing." Silence. Dangerous silence. Malcolm rose slowly from his chair. "What do you mean missing?" "Someone accessed the archive after midnight." Malcolm already knew the answer before the assistant spoke again. Mrs. Veronica Hayes used her clearance code. Downstairs inside the mansion dining hall, Veronica calmly drank coffee while wedding guests praised the family's reputation. Elegant smile. Perfect posture. Like nothing was collapsing around her. But beneath the table, her fingers gripped her phone tightly. "Did you remove the photo?" she whispered coldly into the phone. A nervous male voice answered quietly. "Not all of it." Veronica's eyes hardened instantly. "Then finish the job." Meanwhile, Naomi sat beside Mama Evelyn holding the envelope close to her chest. The old woman coughed painfully beneath thin blankets. "You need to leave this city," Mama Evelyn whispered weakly. Naomi looked shocked. "I cannot leave you. You do not understand what these people can do." Naomi's eyes filled with tears immediately. "I spent my whole life running." Her voice cracked softly. "I am tired." Tiny silence filled the apartment. Then another knock exploded against the door. Hard. Aggressive. Naomi froze instantly. The landlord's voice shouted again. "Open up now." Naomi slowly opened the door a few inches. The landlord stood there holding a printed notice. "You have until tonight." He looked past her shoulder toward the dark apartment. "No rent. No apartment." Naomi lowered her head quietly. "Please, my mother is sick." "Everybody has a story," he muttered before walking away. The words hit Naomi harder than he realized. Everybody has a story. But poor people never got believed. Hours later, Malcolm's black luxury car stopped quietly outside Naomi's apartment building. He looked up at the broken windows and peeling walls in silence. The contrast felt brutal. His world. Her world. Two different planets. "Sir," the assistant said carefully from the front seat. "Do you really think the girl is connected to your grandfather?" Malcolm stared at the old building. "I think somebody worked very hard to erase her." Upstairs, Naomi quickly hid the envelope beneath Mama Evelyn's pillow after hearing footsteps in the hallway. Then her cracked phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "Miss Carter," a female voice said calmly. "This is Veronica Hayes." Naomi's stomach tightened instantly. "What do you want?" Veronica's voice remained smooth. "Dangerous. You are upsetting my family." Naomi gripped the phone tighter. "I did nothing." "Then stop pretending you belong near Malcolm." Naomi's eyes burned with humiliation again. "I never asked to be near him." Veronica laughed softly. "Girls like you always ask eventually." Naomi almost ended the call. But then Veronica spoke again. Colder this time. "Take the money and disappear." Silence. Naomi stared toward Mama Evelyn sleeping weakly beside the leaking window. Medicine almost gone. Rent overdue. No food left. "What money?" Naomi whispered. "Enough to save your mother," Veronica replied smoothly. Tiny hope touched Naomi's chest for one painful second. Then came the trap. "But if Malcolm sees you again, the offer disappears." Naomi's face slowly fell. "You want me to lie?" "I want you gone." Silence swallowed the room again. Naomi's fingers trembled around the phone. Pride fought against desperation inside her chest. Then Mama Evelyn suddenly woke, coughing violently. Blood spotted the cloth in her hand for the first time. Naomi panicked instantly. "Mama!" Veronica heard everything through the phone. Her voice lowered. "You cannot save her without help." Naomi closed her eyes painfully. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this to me?" Veronica answered without emotion. "Because some people should stay forgotten." The line disconnected. Naomi collapsed beside the bed, holding the phone against her chest. Humiliated again. Trapped again. Downstairs, Malcolm stepped out of the black car just as Jordan Hayes suddenly ran toward him holding something small in his hand. "Uncle Malcolm," the little boy whispered urgently. "I found this inside Grandma Veronica's room." Malcolm looked down slowly. In Jordan's hand was the missing burned photograph. But now another piece of the picture was visible. A small child standing beside Elijah Hayes. And written faintly on the back, was a name Malcolm had never seen before. Naomi Hayes. Jordan Hayes held the burned photograph tightly in his small hands while Malcolm stared at the name written across the back. Naomi Hayes. The mansion hallway suddenly felt too quiet. Too heavy. Malcolm slowly took the photograph from the little boy without speaking. His fingers tightened around the paper immediately. "Where did you find this?" Jordan hesitated. "Inside Grandma Veronica's locked drawer." Silence. Malcolm looked back at the photograph again. The little girl beside Elijah Hayes looked almost exactly like Naomi Carter. Same eyes. Same curls. Same silver chain around her neck. A cold feeling settled deep inside his chest. Upstairs in her private suite, Veronica stood frozen when one of the house staff whispered nervously, "Jordan gave Mr. Hayes the old photograph." Her face lost color instantly. "No," she whispered. Then anger replaced fear. Fast. Sharp. Dangerous. "Find that child," she snapped. "Now." Meanwhile, across town, Naomi sat beside Mama Evelyn inside County Hospital's overcrowded emergency wing. Cheap fluorescent lights buzzed above them. Tired families slept in plastic chairs. A baby cried somewhere nearby. Naomi clutched the nearly empty medicine bottle while watching nurses rush past without stopping. "Miss Carter," the doctor finally said softly, approaching with a clipboard. "Your mother needs treatment tonight." Naomi stood immediately. "Please help her." The doctor hesitated. "Without payment approval, we may have to transfer her." Naomi's face fell instantly. "Transfer her where?" The doctor lowered his eyes. "Somewhere cheaper." Silence. Painful silence. Naomi looked toward Mama Evelyn struggling to breathe beneath thin hospital blankets. She felt helpless again. Small. Poor. Invisible. Then her phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. Naomi answered carefully. "Hello." Malcolm's calm voice came through the line. "Where are you?" Naomi froze immediately. "Hospital." Malcolm did not hesitate. "Stay there." Naomi swallowed hard. "Why?" Silence for 1 second. Then Malcolm spoke quietly. "Because somebody lied to me for many years." Across the hospital room, Mama Evelyn slowly opened her eyes after hearing Malcolm's voice through the phone. Fear returned instantly. "No," she whispered weakly. "He must not come here." Naomi covered the phone softly. "Why are you afraid of him?" Mama Evelyn's tired eyes filled with tears. "Not him," she whispered painfully. "The people around him." 1 hour later, a black luxury car stopped outside County Hospital. Nurses turned their heads immediately. Security guards straightened their posture. Rich people never came to places like this unless something serious had happened. Malcolm stepped out wearing a dark coat over his wedding suit. Rain still covered the city streets behind him. Naomi saw him through the hospital hallway glass and instinctively stepped backward. He looked too powerful for her world. Too clean. Too calm. Malcolm approached slowly. "How is she?" Naomi looked exhausted. "Still sick." Malcolm noticed the unpaid treatment forms scattered beside her chair. He quietly picked one up. "Past due. Emergency denial. Transfer request pending." His jaw tightened slightly. "You were carrying food from my wedding to this hospital," he said softly. Naomi looked away in embarrassment. "I told you already." Malcolm studied her face carefully. No manipulation. No greed. Only exhaustion. Then he carefully removed the burned photograph from his coat pocket. Naomi's breathing stopped the moment she saw it. "Where did you get that?" Malcolm watched her closely. "You recognize it?" Naomi stepped closer slowly. Trembling. "That picture was inside Mama Evelyn's old box years ago." Silence exploded between them. Malcolm's eyes sharpened instantly. "What box?" Naomi hesitated. Fear entered her face immediately. I do not know where it is now." Tiny hope flashed across Malcolm's expression. Real evidence. Real connection. If you are listening right now, what do you think this clue really means? And why would someone hide Naomi's real name for so many years? Suddenly a nervous nurse rushed into the hallway. "Miss Carter?" Naomi turned quickly. "Yes." "A woman called the hospital demanding your patient records." Naomi froze. Malcolm's face darkened immediately. "Who called?" The nurse hesitated. She identified herself as Veronica Hayes. Silence. Cold silence. Naomi slowly looked at Malcolm. Fear spread across her face again. Malcolm finally understood one thing clearly now. Veronica was not simply protecting the family reputation. She was protecting a secret. Then Jordan suddenly appeared at the end of the hospital hallway holding Naomi's silver music box in both hands. "Uncle Malcolm," he whispered nervously. It opened again. The tiny music box melody echoed softly through the hallway. But this time, a folded paper hidden inside the lid slipped out onto the floor. Malcolm bent down slowly and unfolded it. His eyes widened instantly. It was an old hospital birth record. And under mother's name, the surname read Hayes. The old hospital birth record trembled slightly in Malcolm Hayes' hands. Under the mother's name, the surname read Hayes. The crowded hospital hallway fell silent around him. Nurses slowed their steps. Jordan Hayes stood beside him clutching the silver music box nervously while Naomi Carter stared at the paper in complete shock. "That is impossible," she whispered. Malcolm looked at her carefully. "Have you ever seen this before?" Naomi shook her head immediately. "No," her voice cracked softly. "Mama Evelyn never showed me anything like that." Across the hallway, Mama Evelyn struggled to sit upright in the hospital bed after hearing the word Hayes. Fear filled her tired eyes again. "Put that paper away," she whispered weakly. "Please." Malcolm slowly walked toward her bedside. Calm. Controlled. But his expression had changed now. The mystery was no longer small. "You know what this means," he said quietly. Mama Evelyn looked away in silence. Naomi stepped closer immediately. "Mama, tell me the truth." The older woman's hands trembled badly beneath the hospital blanket. "Some truths destroy families," she whispered painfully. Silence spread across the room again. Malcolm gently folded the birth record and placed it inside his coat pocket. Careful. Protective. Naomi noticed the gesture instantly. He was not treating the paper like evidence anymore. He was treating it like something dangerous. Something important. Tiny hope flickered inside her chest for the first time in years. Then the hospital administrator suddenly appeared beside the nurse's station holding another clipboard. "Miss Carter?" Naomi turned quickly. "Yes. Your mother's emergency treatment requires immediate financial approval." Naomi's face fell instantly. Malcolm quietly reached for the clipboard before she could speak. "Send the bill to me." Naomi froze. "No," Malcolm looked at her calmly. "Your mother needs help." "I cannot owe rich people favors," Naomi whispered painfully. Malcolm's eyes softened for one brief second. "Then consider it temporary." Jordan stepped closer quietly. "She looks scared all the time," the little boy whispered to Malcolm. Naomi lowered her eyes immediately in embarrassment. Malcolm answered without looking away from her. "People who survive alone too long usually are." Silence again. Soft. Emotional. The hospital lights buzzed faintly above them. Rain still hit the windows outside. Naomi looked exhausted standing there in soaked clothes beside Malcolm's expensive black coat and polished shoes. Two completely different worlds somehow connected by one hidden piece of paper. Then Veronica Hayes appeared at the end of the hallway. Elegant. Cold. Perfect as always. But the moment she saw the folded birth record inside Malcolm's hand, her expression tightened sharply. "Malcolm," she said smoothly, walking closer. "The wedding guests are asking questions." Malcolm did not move. Interesting timing. Veronica ignored the comment and looked directly at Naomi. "You certainly know how to create drama." Naomi swallowed hard but stayed silent. Veronica stepped closer. "First the wedding. Now the hospital." Her voice lowered dangerously. "How convenient." Malcolm interrupted quietly. "Enough." Veronica's smile faded slightly. "You believe her?" Malcolm looked toward the birth record again. "I believe somebody altered the truth." Silence crashed into the hallway. Even the nurses stopped pretending not to listen. Veronica folded her arms slowly. "One paper means nothing. Tiny obstacle. Tiny crack in the hope." Naomi's face fell again. Because Veronica was right. One hidden document was not enough to change anything. Not against a family like the Hayes family. If you are listening right now, what do you think Veronica is really afraid of? And why would someone hide Naomi's true identity for so many years? Jordan suddenly tugged Malcolm's sleeve again. "Uncle Malcolm," he whispered softly. There was another thing inside Grandma Veronica's drawer. Malcolm frowned slightly. "What thing?" Jordan slowly pulled out a tiny rusted key attached to an old faded tag. The tag had only one word written across it. "Lake House." Malcolm's eyes widened instantly. Mama Evelyn looked terrified. "No," she whispered weakly. "Not that place." Naomi looked between them in confusion. "What lake house?" Mama Evelyn's breathing became uneven now. Fear returned stronger than before. "That is where everything happened." Veronica immediately stepped forward. "Jordan, give me that key." The little boy backed away instinctively and hid behind Malcolm. Tiny protection. Tiny trust. Malcolm slowly took the key instead. His voice turned colder now. "Why does this scare you so much, Veronica?" For the first time, Veronica could not answer immediately. Silence betrayed her. Then her phone suddenly buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face changed instantly. Panic. Real panic. Malcolm noticed. "What is it?" Veronica quickly locked the screen. Too late. Malcolm had already seen the message preview. Security footage recovered from Lake House camera. Veronica realized immediately that the evidence was slipping out of her control. Veronica Hayes stared at the phone screen in complete silence after reading the message, security footage recovered from Lake House camera. For the first time that night, real panic broke through her perfect mask. Across the hospital hallway, Malcolm Hayes still held the rusted Lake House key in one hand and the hidden birth record in the other. His eyes slowly lifted toward Veronica. "What happened at the Lake House?" he asked quietly. Veronica forced a cold smile immediately. "Nothing." Mama Evelyn suddenly gasped weakly from the hospital bed. "Liar." Silence exploded through the hallway. Naomi Carter looked between them in confusion and fear. "Mama, what is she talking about?" Mama Evelyn's breathing became uneven again. Tears filled her old eyes. "That house destroyed lives." Malcolm stepped closer slowly. "Calm outside. Shaken inside. Tell me what happened there." The old woman stared at Veronica for a long painful second. "Your grandfather brought a little girl there many years ago," she whispered weakly. "He said she would finally be safe." Naomi's heart began pounding harder immediately. "What little girl?" Mama Evelyn looked directly at her now. Silence stretched across the room. Then she whispered softly, "You." Naomi stepped backward instantly like the word physically hurt her. "No," her voice cracked. "That is impossible." Veronica interrupted sharply. "She is sick." Confused. But Malcolm was no longer listening to Veronica. His eyes stayed fixed on Naomi's face. The same curls from the old photograph. The same exhausted eyes. The same silver music box. Then Jordan quietly stepped beside Malcolm again. "Uncle Malcolm," he whispered. "The girl in the picture had the same scar." Naomi froze immediately. Malcolm frowned slightly. "What scar?" Jordan pointed softly toward Naomi's wrist where the old burn mark rested beneath her sleeve. Naomi instinctively covered it. But Malcolm had already seen it. Silence. Heavy silence. Something old moved behind Malcolm's eyes now. A memory trying to return. "The lake fire," he whispered under his breath. Mama Evelyn closed her eyes painfully. "She pulled someone out that night." Naomi looked terrified now. "What fire?" Nobody answered immediately. Veronica stepped forward fast. "Enough." Her voice shook slightly now. "This girl is manipulating all of you." Malcolm turned slowly toward her. "Then why are you afraid?" Veronica's lips parted. No answer came. Tiny hope filled the hospital room for one fragile moment. Naomi was not crazy. The photograph was real. The hidden birth record was real. Someone had hidden her past on purpose. Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Why would anyone do this?" she whispered painfully. Mama Evelyn looked broken now. "Because your mother loved the wrong man." Silence. Malcolm's breathing slowed. "Who?" Mama Evelyn's hands trembled violently above the blankets. "Elijah Hayes promised to protect both of you after the fire." Veronica immediately cut in. "Stop talking." The old woman ignored her. But someone inside the family wanted the child gone. Malcolm's eyes darkened instantly. "Who?" Before Mama Evelyn could answer, a nurse rushed into the hallway holding another file. "Mr. Hayes." Malcolm turned. "What is it?" "We found an old transfer request connected to the Lake House incident." The nurse handed him the paper carefully. Malcolm scanned it quickly. Then stopped cold. One signature line was missing completely. Another line had been changed by hand years ago. Naomi stared at his face nervously. "What does it say?" Malcolm lifted his eyes slowly toward Veronica. "It says the child survivor was transferred under a different identity." Silence swallowed the hallway again. Naomi's knees nearly gave out beneath her. Different identity, she whispered. Mama Evelyn started crying softly now. I tried to protect you. Veronica stepped closer again. These old papers prove nothing. But even her voice lacked confidence now. Malcolm folded the transfer paper carefully beside the birth record. 2 separate documents. Same hidden surname. Same missing truth. Then Jordan quietly opened the silver music box one more time. A second hidden compartment clicked open beneath the first. Everyone froze. Inside rested an old faded photograph folded into quarters. Malcolm slowly unfolded it beside Naomi's face. The entire hallway fell silent instantly. The child in the photograph was unmistakably Naomi. Standing beside Elijah Hayes. And beside them, partially cut from the picture, stood a woman wearing Veronica Hayes' necklace. Mama Evelyn looked at the photograph and suddenly whispered in fear, the person who did this still lives inside the Hayes mansion. The person who did this still lives inside the Hayes mansion. Mama Evelyn's terrified whisper hung in the hospital hallway like a storm about to break. Naomi Carter stared at the faded photograph in Malcolm Hayes' hands while her breathing turned uneven. The little girl beside Elijah Hayes was clearly her. Same eyes. Same scar. Same silver music box chain around her neck. And partially cut from the photo stood a woman wearing Veronica Hayes' necklace. Veronica stepped forward immediately. This proves nothing. But her voice sounded sharper now. More desperate. Malcolm noticed. Then why was your face cut out of the picture? Silence crashed into the hallway. Veronica crossed her arms tightly. Because old photographs get damaged. Jordan Hayes quietly looked up at her. Then why did you hide it? Veronica's eyes flashed coldly toward the child. Enough. Tiny fear passed through Jordan's face before he moved closer to Malcolm again. Across the hallway, Mama Evelyn suddenly started coughing violently. Nurses rushed toward her bed while Naomi panicked instantly. Mama. The doctor quickly turned toward Naomi. We need space. Naomi stepped backward helplessly while hospital curtains closed around the bed. Her eyes filled with tears immediately. Malcolm noticed the fear in her face and quietly moved beside her. Not too close. Just enough to stop her from collapsing completely. She will not face this alone, he said softly. Naomi looked at him in shock. Nobody had ever said words like that to her before. Tiny hope touched her chest again. Then Veronica destroyed it instantly. Malcolm, she interrupted coldly. You are letting a homeless stranger manipulate your emotions. Naomi lowered her eyes immediately in humiliation. Rich people always made her feel small again. Malcolm's jaw tightened slightly. Stop calling her that. Veronica blinked. Excuse me. She has a name. Silence. Sharp silence. Several nurses nearby stopped pretending not to listen anymore. Veronica quickly regained control of her expression. Fine, she said smoothly. Naomi Carter. She slowly looked at Naomi. Or should we use your other name? Naomi froze instantly. Malcolm turned sharply toward Veronica. What other name? Veronica smiled faintly now. Dangerous. That depends on whether she is telling the truth. Then she reached into her designer purse and calmly placed another document onto the hospital counter. Because according to this, Veronica said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, Naomi Carter was arrested 2 years ago for fraud and identity theft. Silence exploded again. Naomi's face turned pale instantly. No, she whispered. Veronica lifted the document higher while nearby families and nurses began whispering immediately. Phones slowly appeared again. Judgment returned fast. Looks like our poor little victim knows how to lie after all, Veronica announced coldly. Naomi shook her head desperately. That was not me. The name matches. The address does not. Veronica cut her off instantly. Criminals always have excuses. Social pressure crushed the hallway immediately. One woman pulled her child closer away from Naomi. Another whispered, "I knew something felt wrong." Naomi's breathing became uneven again. Second humiliation. Worse than the wedding. Even here. Even beside her sick mother. Malcolm slowly took the paper from Veronica's hand. His eyes scanned it carefully. Then stopped. Tiny hope. Tiny crack. "Interesting," he said quietly. Veronica's smile faded slightly. "What?" Malcolm lifted the page slowly. The arrest happened while Naomi was admitted at County Hospital caring for Mama Evelyn. Silence. Naomi looked up immediately. Veronica's expression tightened for half a second. "That proves nothing." Malcolm looked directly at her now. "It proves someone wanted her name connected to a crime." Tiny hope returned again. Naomi's eyes filled instantly. But before the moment could breathe, another obstacle arrived. Two hospital security guards suddenly approached the hallway. "Miss Carter?" Naomi turned nervously. "Yes. There has been a complaint filed against you for harassment and attempted extortion against the Hayes family." Naomi stared in complete shock. Veronica folded her arms calmly. "I warned you to stay away from Malcolm." The guard stepped closer now. Patients nearby openly watched the scene. Whispering. Judging. Recording. Naomi's dignity shattered again beneath rich people's lies. "Please," she whispered painfully. "My mother is still inside." One guard lowered his eyes awkwardly. "We still need you to leave the building." Malcolm stepped forward immediately. "Nobody removes her until I say so." Silence hit the hallway again. The guards hesitated. Veronica's voice turned colder. "Malcolm, you are embarrassing this family." "Maybe the family embarrassed itself long before tonight," he answered quietly. Veronica's face hardened instantly. Then her phone buzzed again. She glanced down quickly. And for the first time, real panic returned to her eyes. Malcolm noticed immediately. "What now?" Veronica locked the phone too late. Malcolm had already seen the message preview flash across the screen. Original Lakehouse camera file found. Veronica slowly realized the trap she built around Naomi was beginning to crack. And somewhere inside the hospital, an old maintenance worker quietly stepped out from the shadows holding a dusty VHS tape against his chest. The dusty VHS tape rested in the old maintenance worker's trembling hands while the entire hospital hallway watched in silence. Malcolm Hayes stepped forward slowly. "Where did you get that?" The old man swallowed hard. "Lakehouse storage room." Veronica Hayes moved instantly. "That tape is private family property." Malcolm did not even look at her. "Give it to me." The maintenance worker hesitated for one dangerous second before placing the tape carefully into Malcolm's hands. Veronica's face tightened immediately. She understood the danger now. Real danger. One original recording could destroy years of lies. 30 minutes later, the entire Hayes family gathered inside the mansion's grand conference hall. Long black marble table. Crystal chandeliers. Wealthy relatives whispering behind expensive wine glasses. Lawyers. Security guards. Family advisors. Even some wedding guests remained after hearing rumors about scandal inside the Hayes family. Naomi Carter stood near the entrance wearing the same worn clothes from the hospital. She looked painfully out of place beneath the golden lights and luxury portraits hanging on the walls. Several rich guests stared openly. One woman whispered loudly, "That is the homeless girl from the wedding." Another muttered, "Now she wants money too." Naomi lowered her eyes but stayed standing. She had survived worse humiliation already. Across the room, Veronica sat calmly at the head of the table wearing a white silk suit. Elegant. Controlled. Like she still owned the room. Malcolm stood beside the large screen mounted against the wall. Silent. Watching everyone carefully. The VHS tape rested beside him. So did the burned photograph, the hidden birth record, and the lake house key. Pieces of a truth nobody fully understood yet. Jordan Hayes quietly sat near Naomi instead of beside Veronica. That small choice did not go unnoticed. Veronica's voice cut through the room smoothly. Before this ridiculous situation damages the Hayes name further, I would like everyone to understand exactly who Naomi Carter is. Naomi's stomach tightened immediately. Veronica slid another document across the table toward the family lawyers. Unpaid rent. Hospital debt. Fraud investigation. No legal records before age 12. Guests exchanged looks instantly. Phones slowly lifted again. Naomi's hands trembled softly beside her torn bag. I never lied, she whispered. Veronica smiled faintly. Poor people rarely call it lying. Silence hit the room again. Malcolm's expression darkened immediately. Enough. Veronica looked at him calmly. You brought her into this house. Malcolm answered quietly. Because somebody spent years trying to erase her. Tiny hope flickered through the room. A few relatives started exchanging uncertain looks now. One older aunt leaned forward slowly. The girl does resemble Elijah. Veronica turned sharply. That is coincidence. Then she looked directly at Naomi. Tell them the truth. You came to that wedding to steal. Naomi's face burned with humiliation again. But this time she did not look down immediately. I stole bread, she said softly. Because my mother had not eaten in 2 days. Silence. Real silence. Even the rich guests stopped whispering for one painful second. Malcolm watched Naomi carefully. No performance. No manipulation. Just exhaustion and dignity fighting to survive. If you are listening right now. Who do you believe deserves justice in this room? And what do you think Veronica is still hiding? Veronica quickly regained control. A touching story changes nothing. She stood slowly from her chair and faced the room. This girl appeared out of nowhere carrying fake documents and old stories connected to a dead man. Then she pointed toward the screen behind Malcolm. And now Malcolm wants everyone to believe a damaged tape from 20 years ago. Social pressure shifted again immediately. Some guests nodded. Lawyers whispered together. One board member muttered, this could ruin the company. Naomi felt herself shrinking beneath the weight of rich people protecting each other again. Then Malcolm calmly stepped between Naomi and the crowd. Quiet authority. Protective without touching her. Nobody leaves this room, he said evenly. Veronica laughed softly. You still do not have proof. Malcolm looked directly at her. Then why are you afraid to watch the tape? Silence slammed across the mansion hall. Veronica's smile faded for half a second. Tiny crack. Tiny fear. At the far end of the room, the old maintenance worker slowly stepped forward again. His hands shook badly now. Mr. Hayes, he whispered nervously. There is something else. Every head turned toward him. He pulled an old sealed envelope from inside his jacket. Yellowed with age. Elijah Hayes' signature visible across the front. Naomi's breathing stopped instantly. Veronica went pale. Do not open that, she snapped sharply. Malcolm slowly took the envelope without breaking eye contact with her. The room became completely silent. Then the mansion lights dimmed automatically as the large screen flickered alive behind him. The recovered lake house footage was ready to play. Malcolm held the envelope tightly in one hand and looked across the room at every silent face. Then he spoke one calm sentence that made Veronica's hands begin to shake. Before you judge her, watch this. Before you judge her, watch this. Malcolm Hayes' calm voice echoed through the mansion conference hall as the recovered lake house footage flickered onto the giant screen. Every whisper died instantly. Naomi Carter stood frozen near the marble wall while rich guests slowly lowered their phones. Veronica Hayes remained seated at the head of the table, but her fingers tightened around the armrest beneath the silk sleeve of her white suit. The screen crackled softly. Then the old black and white footage finally cleared. Rain. Firelight. The lake house porch 20 years earlier. A little black girl crying beside Elijah Hayes. Silence crashed through the room immediately. Naomi's breathing stopped. The child on the screen was unmistakably her. Same scar. Same silver music box hanging around her neck. Elijah Hayes knelt beside the little girl in the footage and wrapped his coat around her shoulders protectively. Then his voice filled the room through the damaged speakers. "You are safe now, Naomi Hayes." Gasps spread across the conference hall instantly. One woman covered her mouth. Another guest whispered, "Hayes." Naomi staggered backward slightly. Tears filled her eyes immediately. Malcolm never looked away from the screen. "Continue," he ordered quietly. The footage jumped forward suddenly. A woman's voice shouted off camera. Then Veronica Hayes appeared near the lake house doorway. Younger. Panicked. Angry. "The child cannot stay here," she snapped. Silence exploded through the room again. Veronica stood abruptly. "This footage is edited." Malcolm ignored her completely. The screen continued playing. Elijah Hayes' voice rose sharply now. "She is family." More silence. Heavier this time. Naomi's hands trembled beside her torn jacket. Family. The word hit her like a wound opening after years buried alive. Veronica pointed toward the screen desperately. "This proves nothing." But then the footage revealed the next piece. Elijah handing the silver music box directly to the little girl. "Keep this safe," he told her gently. "If anything happens to me, this will prove who you are." The entire room fell silent again. Nobody whispered now. Nobody laughed. Phones slowly lowered one by one. Malcolm carefully placed the real music box onto the marble table beneath the screen. Evidence. Truth. Memory. All connected. Veronica's breathing became uneven. "He was confused," she said quickly. "Old. Emotional." Then the old maintenance worker stepped forward trembling. "That is not true." Every head turned toward him. "I worked at the lake house that night," he whispered. Mr. Elijah wanted the girl officially recognized. Veronica snapped instantly. "You are lying." The old man shook his head slowly. "You burned the paperwork after he died." Public silence swallowed the room completely. Naomi covered her mouth as tears finally rolled down her face. She was no longer just the homeless girl from the wedding. The truth itself was speaking now. Malcolm slowly opened the sealed envelope Elijah Hayes had left behind. Inside rested another document. Signed. Notarized. Official. Elijah Hayes' private declaration of guardianship for Naomi Hayes. A few family members stood from their chairs in complete shock. One board member whispered, "My God." Veronica stepped backward now. Panic finally replacing control. That document was never filed. Malcolm lifted his eyes toward her. Calm. Sharp. Dangerous. Because somebody made sure it disappeared. Veronica pointed toward Naomi desperately. She still came to the wedding to steal. Naomi finally spoke for the first time in many minutes. Quiet. Broken. Honest. "I came for bread." Silence. Raw silence. Even the lawyers lowered their eyes. Jordan Hayes slowly walked toward Naomi and gently held her hand. "You were hungry," he whispered softly. Naomi nearly broke completely at those words. No accusation. No judgment. Just simple truth. Then Malcolm pulled another paper from the envelope. The room tensed instantly again. "There is more," he said quietly. Veronica's face lost all color. Malcolm slowly read the final lines aloud. "If anything happens to Naomi Hayes, investigate Veronica Hayes immediately. She knows why the child was hidden." The conference hall erupted into shocked whispers instantly. Veronica shook her head wildly. "Elijah wrote that after we argued." Malcolm looked directly into her eyes now. "Then answer one question." Silence slammed across the room again. Veronica could not move. Could not speak. Malcolm's voice stayed calm. Controlled. But deadly serious. "Why did you spend 20 years trying to erase Naomi Hayes from this family? Why did you spend 20 years trying to erase Naomi Hayes from this family?" Malcolm Hayes' question hung over the conference hall like judgment itself. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Veronica Hayes stood frozen beside the marble table while every eye in the room locked onto her face. The giant screen behind Malcolm still showed the image of little Naomi standing beside Elijah Hayes at the lake house. The silver music box rested under the chandelier light like proof that refused to die. Veronica finally shook her head slowly. "You do not understand," she whispered. Malcolm's voice stayed calm. "Then explain it." Silence. Heavy silence. Veronica looked around the room desperately now. Wealthy relatives. Lawyers. Wedding guests. People who once admired her. Nobody came to her defense anymore. "Elijah was making a mistake," she said suddenly. "That child would have destroyed this family." Naomi Carter flinched like the words physically struck her. Malcolm's jaw tightened instantly. She was a child. Veronica pointed toward Naomi with trembling fingers. "Her mother trapped Elijah." "That is a lie," Mama Evelyn's weak voice echoed from the back of the room. Gasps spread immediately as nurses slowly wheeled her into the conference hall from the hospital transport van. She looked exhausted beneath thin blankets. But her eyes were steady now. Truth had finally become heavier than fear. Naomi rushed toward her immediately. "Mama," Mama Evelyn held her hand softly. "No more hiding." Public silence swallowed the room again. Veronica stepped backward. "She is sick." Mama Evelyn ignored her completely. "Elijah loved Naomi like family," she whispered painfully. "After the lake house fire, he promised to protect her publicly." Malcolm slowly unfolded the guardianship document again. But the paperwork vanished after his death. One lawyer near the table quietly adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Hayes," he said carefully, "these records suggest deliberate suppression of inheritance identity." Veronica's face lost color instantly. Family inheritance. Public scandal. Legal consequences. Everything she spent years protecting now stood exposed under mansion lights. "I did it for this family," she whispered desperately. Nobody answered. Not even the wealthy relatives sitting beside her. One by one, they slowly looked away. The same people who laughed at Naomi during the wedding now sat in silence while the truth buried Veronica instead. Jordan Hayes quietly walked toward Naomi and placed the silver music box back into her hands. "It always belonged to you," he whispered softly. Naomi's fingers trembled around it. Tears filled her eyes instantly. For years that small object carried shame, confusion, hunger, fear. Now it carried truth. Malcolm stepped beside Naomi calmly. Protective. Steady. Naomi Hayes was hidden, he announced clearly to the room. Her records were altered. Her identity erased. And while this family celebrated wealth, she lived hungry. Silence crushed the room again. One wedding guest slowly lowered her phone in shame. Another quietly wiped tears from her face. Veronica shook her head wildly now. I never wanted her hurt. Naomi finally spoke. Quiet. Broken. Honest. But you watched it happen. Those 4 words destroyed whatever remained of Veronica's control. Her shoulders collapsed slightly. The perfect mask finally cracked. I was afraid, she whispered weakly. Malcolm answered without anger. Fear does not excuse cruelty. Tiny emotional release moved through the room. Not revenge. Justice. Moral truth finally standing where lies once ruled. Then Malcolm turned toward the Hayes legal team. Effective immediately, Veronica Hayes is suspended from all family board authority pending investigation into identity fraud and document suppression. Gasp spread again. Veronica stared at him in complete shock. You would humiliate me publicly? Malcolm looked directly at her. You did that to Naomi for 20 years. Silence. Final silence. No applause. No cheering. Just truth finally breathing inside the mansion. Mama Evelyn slowly squeezed Naomi's hand. You were never worthless, she whispered through tears. Naomi broke down crying softly beside her bed for the first time without shame. Not because she was weak. Because somebody finally believed her. Malcolm carefully handed Naomi the restored guardianship papers. Your name was stolen, he said quietly. But it belongs to you again now. Naomi looked at the document with trembling hands. Naomi Hayes. The name felt unfamiliar. Painful. Beautiful. Real. Across the room, wealthy relatives who once ignored her now stood silent before her dignity. Veronica sat alone at the far end of the marble table while nobody moved to comfort her anymore. The power she protected for years had collapsed under the weight of truth. Then Malcolm looked toward Naomi gently. Your mother needs proper care, he said softly. And you should not return to that apartment tonight. Naomi looked up slowly. Fear and hope fighting inside her eyes again. Malcolm extended his hand toward her. Calm. Patient. Safe. And as the giant mansion doors slowly opened behind him, his next words made Naomi's entire world stop. Come home. Naomi stood frozen beneath the mansion lights while Malcolm Hayes kept his hand extended toward her. Come home. Those 2 words echoed inside her chest harder than the public humiliation from the wedding ever had. For a second, she could not move. Her old shoes were still wet from the rain outside. Her faded coat still smelled like the alley behind the ballroom where security dragged her earlier that night. But now the giant doors of the Hayes mansion stood open for her instead of closing against her. Mama Evelyn smiled weakly from the wheelchair beside her. Go, she whispered softly. Naomi's eyes filled with tears again. Not fear this time. Relief. Slow. Careful. Painful relief. Malcolm waited patiently while the entire room stayed silent. No cameras flashed anymore. No whispers. No laughter. Only truth remained now. Naomi finally stepped forward. One step. Then another. She crossed the marble floor slowly like somebody learning how to breathe again. Jordan Hayes quietly picked up Naomi's torn bag from the corner of the room and handed it back carefully. Nobody will throw this away again, he said gently. Naomi held the old bag tightly against her chest. For years it carried unpaid bills, medicine receipts, cheap bread, and survival. Tonight it carried dignity back into her hands. The silver music box rested inside beside the restored guardianship papers. Proof that her life had mattered all along. Days later, sunlight filled a quiet room inside the Hayes Estate Hospital wing. Mama Evelyn finally received proper treatment without begging doctors for more time. Fresh flowers stood near her bed. Real medicine. Warm blankets. Peace. Naomi sat beside her quietly holding her hand. "I thought we would die forgotten," Naomi whispered painfully. Mama Evelyn smiled through tears. "But you survived." Emotional silence filled the room softly. Safe silence this time. Malcolm entered quietly carrying a folder. No bodyguards. No reporters. Just calm presence. "The legal restoration process has started," he said gently. "Your identity, education fund, and family rights will be fully returned." Naomi looked down at the papers with shaking hands again. Naomi Hayes. Her real name no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a future. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Malcolm looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because somebody should have done it years ago." No grand romance. No dramatic speech. Just honesty. Respect. Healing. Across the city, Veronica Hayes no longer appeared beside the family board. Her authority disappeared quietly after the investigation began. Wealthy relatives who once protected her now avoided her completely. But the story no longer belonged to Veronica. It belonged to Naomi. Weeks later, Naomi walked through the Hayes Foundation building wearing clean clothes and a simple cream-colored dress Malcolm's staff helped choose for her first official day. Not luxury. Not excess. Just dignity. Employees who once ignored homeless people near the gates now greeted her respectfully. One older secretary smiled warmly. "Welcome, Miss Hayes." Naomi almost cried hearing those words. She once stole food to survive. Now she stood inside a building where her voice mattered. Mama Evelyn slowly recovered. Jordan often visited with groceries and flowers. The nurses laughed more around Naomi now because she thanked everyone, even the cleaners. She never forgot where she came from. One evening, Naomi stood alone in the mansion library beside an old framed photograph of Elijah Hayes holding the silver music box near the lake house years ago. Malcolm stepped beside her quietly. "He wanted you protected," Malcolm said softly. Naomi touched the frame carefully. "I spent my whole life believing I was unwanted." Malcolm shook his head once. "You were hidden. That is different." Tears rolled slowly down Naomi's face again. But now they carried peace instead of shame. In the distance, Mama Evelyn's laughter echoed softly from the garden while children played near the fountain outside. Warm light filled the mansion windows. Safe home. Safe people. Safe future. Naomi carefully placed the silver music box inside the family display cabinet beside Elijah's photograph. Not hidden anymore. Not stolen anymore. Finally seen. Then she turned toward the open mansion doors where the same city that once mocked her glowed quietly beyond the hills. Malcolm stood beside her calmly. Not above her. Beside her. And for the first time in years, Naomi smiled without fear. Because the world finally learned something simple. Do not laugh at the poor because you do not know their story. Do not judge people by torn clothes, hunger, or silence. Truth may be delayed, but it cannot stay buried forever. Those who destroy others with lies will eventually stand alone before their own cruelty. And sometimes, kindness arrives at the exact moment a broken soul is ready to give up.